volume. Okay. So while I explaining the architecture, I told that, okay, Docker daemon will be managing the containers, images, and volume to retain the data on the container. Let's see an example of what is the need for retaining a Docker image, okay, and how to do that. So first, let's run a Jenkins image, okay. So let me go to dockerhub.com. So dockerhub.com is the public repository for images. So here, let me search for Jenkins and let me take the latest one. So 2.60.3 is the latest one. So let me run the Jenkins container first. So the command is docker run -d. I want it to run on the daemon mode, and then I want it to remove after the I want it to be automatically removed after the execution. So -rm, and I'm going to do the port mapping. So by default, Jenkins will be running on port 8080. So I'm going to map my 80 of this machine to the 8080 of the container. So 80:8080. So this 8080 represents the container port. The first 80 represents the host port. Okay. And the image name is Jenkins : so I talked about by default it will be looking for the latest tag, but in Jenkins there is no latest tag available. The tag available is called 20.60.3. So 2.60.3. So let's run it. So this container, this image is not available locally, so it's downloading it. Let's wait for the container to be deployed or executed. Yeah. So once it is completed, if you issue docker ps, you can see the container is in the running state. So let us try to browse our public key, public IP. So get your respective public IP and go to your browser. Then you can see there will be a screen like this. Okay. So this is the default configuration screen for Jenkins. When you install Jenkins, it will automatically generate an initial admin password and it will store it on this location. So there is a location mentioned in the screen, right? So there will be a default initial admin password will be generated and it will be stored on this location. So we need to give that and we need to configure the Jenkins for the first time. Okay, because this is the first time we are going to use the Jenkins. So to get this, I need to get the content of the file. So for that, let's talk about a command which will execute. Imagine like there is a running container. In the container, I want to read a content of the file. Okay. So in Docker, there is a command called docker exec. Docker exec. So docker exec, and I can give the container ID. Okay. And if I want to execute any command inside the container, I can give after that. That is the use of a exec. So till now we have talked about docker run. Docker exec is a command. If you want to execute something inside the running container, you can do it. So first let us do this docker exec, that container ID, that is a container ID you got from docker ps. And there, let me just do a ls/var. So this will list the content of the /var inside the container. My Jenkins will be installed under /var, and ls is a command to list the directory or list the files. So when I run this command, what it is doing is Docker is listing the directories inside the /var partition of the Jenkins container. So with the Docker exec, I am going to get the content of this file because I know that in this file only I'm going to have the initial admin password. So let me do that. Let me copy the content. So I'm going to give Docker exec and the container ID for the. I'm going to give cat as a Linux command to print the content of the file, and I'm going to give that location of the file. So this command, so I'm giving a partial container ID here. So it will give some alphanumeric code. This is the initial admin password which Jenkins get automatically generated when I run the container. So now copy the output of this, copy the alphanumeric code and come back to your Jenkins and give the password there. So basically what we are doing is we are bringing up a Jenkins container and we are doing the initial configurations. Okay. Okay. So now click on the select plugins to install. Okay. Select plugins to install and in the top select the none, because I'm not going to install any plugin. Just select none and then click install. There it will ask you to create a initial admin user. So the username is admin and the password also I'm going to keep it as admin. Same password I'm giving and in the full name also admin. So everything I'm going to give as admin. And click on save and finish. And you will get a prompt like that. Jenkins is ready. So start using Jenkins. So my Jenkins is now ready to use. No need to download, create a mission, install Java on it, install the Jenkins package, run the service, nothing. Just run the container, your Jenkins is up and running. So basically, I have downloaded the Jenkins image and executed. I'm able to access my Jenkins application. So whatever the application where I have the Docker image available, I can do the same thing. Okay. So the working principle of the application may differ from application to application. So we have the Jenkins up and running. Okay. Imagine a scenario that our Docker container has stopped, right? So let's stop the Docker container, do Docker PS and give Docker stop and the container ID. And if you rerun the Jenkins using the same command, so the same command I'm going to use to run the Jenkins. If I come back and refresh this page, whatever configurations I have done is gone. The initial configuration I have done right. So everything will be lost because Docker by design it is ephemeral. Okay. So whenever you are making any changes inside the container, all the changes will be lost if you stop and start the container. But if this is the case, I will not be able to run applications like this, right? So every time when I stop the container and bring up the Jenkins, it's not going to retain the data. Or in the same case, if it is a database, right? If I'm going to write some data and any data written inside the container will be lost, means it's a huge I cannot really run an application, data-driven application with containers, right? So that is where volume comes into picture. Okay, volume is nothing but you can attach a persistent volume to a container. Even if the container goes down, the data inside the volume will be retained And if you rerun the container by attaching the same volume, your data will, the application data will remain intact. So this is the concept of volume. So to show that only, I have brought up a container. When I stop and started, it is losing all the data inside the container because Docker by design itself, it's ephemeral. It cannot persist data inside the container. So now let us see how do I attach a volume so that it can persist the data inside the container. Okay, it's not actually inside the container. In the volume, the data is persisted. Okay, to talk about volume support. Okay, so Docker can communicate to your local machine, and from there it can create a directory and it can mount it to the container. This is one option available, or otherwise you can install plugins in the Docker daemon through which it can communicate to external storage devices. Like for example, you are using your fiber optics channel, or you are having a network share or a NFS share, or you are having using VMware or some other storage providers. So those kind of things, Docker you can install plugin. Via the plugin, Docker daemon can communicate to these storage providers. From there, storage can be given to that. In our lab, what we are going to do is we are going to create a local storage. We are going to create a storage with the local driver where the file will be created on the local machine, and that will be attached to a container. So let's see that. So for that, we are going to create a local volume using Docker volume command. So first, let me stop the container if it is running, and let's create a local volume using Docker command. So the command is Docker volume create, let me call it as Jenkins volume. So this will create a volume with the name Jenkins volume. Here Jenkins volume is the name of the volume. Okay. So where exactly it will create is, it will create that in the var-lib docker. Inside that you will have the volumes directory. There you can see it is creating a directory. So the volume is created. So if I want to list all the Docker volumes which are available on the Docker machine, the command is Docker volume. So Docker volume ls will list all the volumes which are present on the Docker host. This is the command. And in case if I want to remove a volume, right? So the command is Docker volume rm, the volume name. So let's create an additional volume. So Docker volume create test, and Docker volume ls, and if I want to remove the volume, Docker volume rm, the volume name. So this is how you can create and remove a volume. Now let's see how do I run the Jenkins container by attaching a volume. Okay, whenever you want to attach a volume, you need to know in which directory I want this volume to be attached. So basically, Jenkins will be writing the files onto where Jenkins home. Okay, so now let us create the Jenkins container by attaching this volume. So the option will be, so let the port mapping will be the same, and let me also give a name for this. So name of the container, let me call it as Jenkins, and to mount a volume, the option is -v, okay, and I need to provide the volume name colon on what directory I want this to be mounted onto the container. So it will be /var/ Jenkins_home. And then I need to provide the image name. Image name is Jenkins:2.60.3. So let me repeat. So docker run -d for daemon mode, --rm to remove it, -p for port mapping, and I'm going to name it as Jenkins, and -v for volume mapping. So the Jenkins volume which I created, I'm going to mount it inside the container on var Jenkins home, and then I'm giving the image name. So when I run this, this is going to create the container, and this time to get the initial admin password, instead of getting the initial admin password via exec, I am going to get the password from the volume directory itself. I know that I have told you that, right? So it is getting mounted from the local machine because I've used a local driver. So let me get the password from the volume itself. So where exactly it will be is cd Jenkins volume _data secrets pwd. So this will be the location of the initial admin password. So let me give that command to you guys. Sudo cat / initial admin password. So instead of getting the password from the container, from the local machine, I'm getting the initial admin password. So let me copy paste this. So let me repeat the same steps here. None install, and let me create the user as admin, and save and finish. Start using Jenkins. So let us create a small job. So click on create new job and name it as like test, just to see whether the job is retained, and click freestyle project and click OK and save it. I'm not going to do anything else. Now let us try to stop the container and restart it. So I think last time I have named the container as Jenkins, so I'll be able to stop it with the name. So the command is docker stop Jenkins, because I have named it as Jenkins. Now let us rerun the same command with the same volume mounting, right? So same volume mounting, I'm going to rerun it. Now if I go back to the Jenkins screen and see, I should get a login prompt where I should be able to log in with the admin user which I created. Yes. So now it is asking for the username and password. I have created a default admin user with the username admin and password as admin, and I'm able to see the test job which I created. So this is the use of a volume in the containers. So coming back to the microservice principle, so any data should not be retained inside the container. If you want to retain a data from a container, you need to attach a volume, and the data should be written on the volume, not inside the container.